Welcome to Live from the Table, the official podcast for the world famous Comedy Cellar. I am here with Noam Dwarman, the owner of the Comedy Cellar. I am Periel Ashenbrand, the producer of the show. Dan Natterman is on a cruise and as such will not be joining us today. Good evening, everyone. We have two very special guests today. Ross Barkan is a columnist for New York Magazine and a contributing writer to the New York Times Magazine. He's the editor-in-chief of the Metropolitan Review, a new books and culture review magazine, and his new novel, Glass Century, is out now. Welcome back to the show, Ross Barkan.
Very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And our other very special guest is Jesse Singal, former writer.
Single, yeah.
Single?
Yeah, it's okay. Go ahead.
And our other very special guest is Jesse Singal, former writer at large at New York Magazine, co-host of Blocked and Reported, and author of The Quick Fix: Why Fad Psychology Can't Cure Our Social Ills. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. All right. I'm very happy to have you guys here. So let me say, Periel just screwed everything up, but I first of all,
you've been very anti-Periel since you walked in, to be honest.
I saw you guys beefing on Twitter, and this is from the bottom of my heart. I said, these are two of the people that I know that I hold in the inner circle of the most reasonable people, the most good-natured about disagreeing, and the people whose opinions I most feel that I have to really, really consider before I dismiss them. And now they're fighting. And I said, this was hurtful to me. I swear to God. I said, this is, of all the people I know who shouldn't be fighting, it's these two guys. These two guys should be hanging out. So I said, do you guys want to come on the show and talk about it? And you both agreed to it. But I thought, things like that could go bad. I said, so what we should start by doing is let me get a bottle of wine and we'll pour some wine on the air and we'll have a toast just to put things in the right spirit of a conciliatory conversation. And then of course Periel just opens the bottle and
pause. And yet Noam, who had been sitting across the table from me for the past hour, did not mention a word of this to me, just said, here's a bottle of wine.
I didn't even say that.
Well,
I asked Johnny to take up the wine,
okay,
and you said I'll bring it.
And
nobody's really mad.
But you had no idea what I wanted it for.
But how come you didn't tell me, hey Periel, if you're going to nicely offer to save one of my waiters a trip upstairs?
You're right.
Oh, what?
Yes, but it's not flattering. The reason that you're right is not flattering to you, but yes, you're right. I should have left nothing to chance.
You should have said, don't open it, because...
Why would it occur to you that maybe he has something intended with this wine? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Why would it occur to you that if you're not here, it's nice to say, hi guys, welcome, that it's also coming for me, it's nice to welcome them with a glass of wine?
I'll tell you why, then we're going to move on. Because I've never done that before. Okay.
So
cheers, everybody. Periel doesn't get any.
Periel doesn't want. No, I don't want any.
Tiana, you want some wine? No. Okay.
No, and she needs to be sober.
So, I'm going to read what it was that I saw.
Hell yeah.
And then I'll let you guys take it from there. So, this was April 20th.
That was 420. Wow.
Yeah, 420. 4 and 20 years ago. Okay. Ross Barkan. It's good to see the 2010s and the early 20s, quote, anti-woke writers and intellectuals who still defend the First Amendment during Trump 2.0. Shout outs to Zaid Jilani, Michael Tracy, Glenn Greenwald, and Andrew Sullivan. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. And then the hapless Aaron Gittleman chimes in.
I love Aaron. Aaron's a good guy.
I don't even know who he is. Chimes in, Jesse Singal too. And then Ross wasn't going to take that lying down. He adds, yeah, but I'm a hater because he reaped what he sowed on anti-trans. I suppose to a degree Sullivan did as well, but I think Sullivan is a better and more interesting writer. Singal is like replacement level Dem opinions coupled with trans obsession. Kind of weird, honestly. And then he continues. I guess he took another swig of his whiskey. Jesse could have written like 2 Substack pieces. One on the Leah Thomas thing, crossing the line. Another on how the UK is right about banning transitioning for minors, and called it a day. But he made anti-trans his shtick, his hustle, and he got the GOP he wanted. All right, Ross.
I'll say.
Is there anything you want to walk back there?
Yeah, I do. I honestly, yeah. Twitter X. I was being too much of a hater. Yeah, There are parts I will not, but yeah, I think generally speaking.
Okay, so why don't we do it this way? I don't let you.
I was too much of a hater.
Why don't we strike that from the record?
Less of a hater in person.
Why don't you strike that from the record?
I should say, quickly. There's been a lot of online fighting and bullshit. I think Ross is the first person who agreed to an actual discussion. So whatever other disagreements, I want to give him credit for that.
Which actually bore out my feeling about him.
Yeah. No, I was like to talk things out. No,
so strike that from the record and make your point. Make your
some
point.
Some of it was far.
I am a mediocre writer. I don't disagree with that. Anyway,
I should not have called you mediocre writer.
That's the least important part of it.
It's the hustler, but go ahead.
Or hustle. I apologize. I have a hustle too, but I apologize for that. Those too many barbs. No, I think I was speaking from a place of frustration, which is not Jesse's fault. Honestly, it's not Jesse's fault. Where it feels on the Republican side now the hostility to trans people is deeply personalized and deeply nasty. And I have friends who are trans, I have family who are trans, and so for me, I've been emotionally tied up with it because while, as I said in my tweet, I think there's a lot of places we would agree, honestly, where there were many excesses in the trans movement of the 2010s and into the 20s with women's athletics, Leah Thomas breaking all the records at Penn. I mean, that was not good, not something that should have happened. And, like I said, the discussion.
What's your argument for why that shouldn't have happened?
My argument would be that when it comes to athletics, you need real gender-specific guidelines that I'm not
like biological sex specific.
I think so. I think for athletics, yes. I'm sort of with the Martina Navratilova position that women and men have to compete separately. Yeah. That's just how it works. And someone who transitioned a few years ago and heads into women's sports does have an unfair advantage. I as a sports fan myself, very sympathetic to that argument. I would say, and also transitioning before 18. I think when you're 18, you should do whatever you want. You're an adult,
except vote. Go ahead.
Except vote. Well, you can vote it.
Except drink. I'm sorry. Except drink.
Oh, drink. Yeah. Drink. I would probably lower that to 18. Yeah. I'd make it a straight 18. Under 18, I have questions about having a child and a teen. Take very serious hormones that are irreversible. Again, I'm not the expert here, but yeah, that's something I, have concerns about. It's not something that excises me a lot. I don't have kids, so it's not really an issue I care too much about. But I recognize, the position, and the UK has banned it, right? So it's not that it's not a fringe position. So it's something I'm very sympathetic to, as well. And then the other. What was the third? There's a third point.
Obsession.
Sorry?
The obsession part.
Oh, so I think there is too much focus on the trans issue from all sides, to be honest. It's a very small part of the population. And that doesn't mean you don't report on it, doesn't mean you don't write about it, doesn't mean you don't talk about it. I find on the right and the left, and this is bipartisan, there is far too much energy and attention given. The left has, in the past, I think it's changing in the Democratic Party, but, definitely sort of naive views on gender. And I think the right is openly bigoted and hostile. And I see that with the evolution of MAGA, where it is now, how, the first Trump campaign didn't talk about trans issues. Trump 2016, even Trump 2020 wasn't interested in it really, but by 2024 it is central to the campaign. It's an issue that proved to be a winning issue. I'm more skeptical on how. I think the ad was effective. The she's for they them. I think there are other deciding factors in that election.
Yeah, I wouldn't pin it on that ad.
But no,
anything involving wokeness, actually.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't want to cut you off, but wrap it up so Jesse can answer.
Oh, so in conclusion, my general non-barbed, calm in-person take. Again, I take back the invective. I didn't mean it. It's Twitter. You're popping things off, as you know, in like 6 seconds. My general take is there are issues I agree with you on with it. I do think the Republican Party has become deeply bigoted and hostile. And that bothers me.
You will not be surprised. I'm just going to go on a limb that
and I know Jesse's on the left as well.
He's going to agree with you about the bigotry of the right.
I know, and so I don't blame you. I take that, but I don't blame you for it. It's not your fault. My concern is that there has been a lot of focus on this issue, and it has something that has been weaponized, and things get weaponized, right? I've done written things that probably have gotten weaponized, but that is a concern I have. So I'll stop talking and go ahead.
Mr. Sinwar?
You can call me Yaya. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is sort of what I expected would happen. I find there's a lot of online discourse where I ask, someone will get mad at me, usually much madder than you were, to be fair. And I'll be like, what do you disagree with me about? And they sort of struggle to come up with an answer. So in this case, it sounds like you're talking about the hypothetical idea of my work being weaponized. And I think in much the same way you seem to start to reject that, I just reject that. I think, okay, so like libs of TikTok, who spends every day tweeting out videos of like they, them teachers with blue hair who are just frankly random nobodies and who represent 0.001% of teachers and is trying to construct a moral panic. The more highbrow version of that, I think, is Chris Rufo, who's not wrong about everything, but is very open about his idea. He wants to fight basically a war against liberal institutions. I'm just not, in my situation, like I'm among online asshole, Noam's arch enemy, other roles. Like I am a science journalist. I've written a book about sort of shoddy scientific ideas and how they impact society. And this is a beat I found myself in part because back when I started writing about it, there wasn't anyone else on the left covering it. And I think there's major, I've gotten, I don't want to say radicalized because it hasn't changed my politics, but if you come at this from a place of like the little bit of knowledge I have about how to read and evaluate studies, and you see what medical experts are saying about these treatments, and then you talk to the families, and then you talk to the kids, I just think what's going on is really bad in terms of the exaggerations, the claim that you give kids these treatments, it will ameliorate their suicide. And if you don't give them the treatments, they will kill themselves. I just think that's the gravest, most serious claim a medical professional can make to a parent who's genuinely trying to figure out how to help their kid. And, it pisses me off a little bit because I think everyone has a right to good information about treatments they're considering, first and foremost, trans adults and trans kids themselves. So the way I interpreted your tweets is, I don't know. It's just like, what should I do? Is it like Trump was elected, so I should take the next, like push off my book on this and not write about it because it'll weaponize it? What do you mean by the weaponizing part?
I guess I want to clarify to your position so I don't mischaracterize them. Yeah. So when one is 18, do you think they should be free to pursue these treatments and medications? I'm not an expert, but do you think once you are an adult, you should have the right to access these kinds of treatments?
Yeah, I think on balance, I also, that's through this protocol called informed consent, where the doctor gives you hopefully a thick stack of paper laying out like what the potential risks and benefits are. And you decide as a legal adult of sound mind, you want to do that. I'm in favor of that. I also think we're at the point where, in terms of the gap between what doctors say and what the evidence is, that like a few doctors basically need to get sued at this point for misleading their patients. But fundamentally, I think I have like a pretty libertarian stance for adults. I think, that being said, if I'm going to be honest, there's like a part of me that's a little bit queasy because you talk to parents there's just like some really fucked up cases. And in terms of the parents who reach out to me, it's selecting for the fucked up cases. So
Right.
maybe for every fucked up case I hear about, there's
Right.
100 cases where kids flourish. I'm a little bit skeptical of that, but you're talking about a 17-year-old on the autism spectrum, history of eating disorders, suicide attempts. There is part of me where like I don't feel like I can back off of my belief about 18, but a kid who's 17 years old and 11 and a half months and has all these problems, sometimes they've had problems with psychosis. The idea that the second they turn 18, I'm a little bit skeptical of that. As I'm guessing
Would you make
you
it
are too.
21? Do you have an age? Like for me, it's like once you're an adult, you should be able to do
I think
what you
yeah,
want
basically
with your body.
I-
That's my feeling. At 18, you
I
should
think it probably
have that right.
has to be 18. I will say the more
Yeah, you'd push it you'd push it back to like 21.
No, I think I'd have to stick to 18 just
with reservations.
yeah, and
But if it was your child, you'd prefer them to wait to 21.
yeah, well, but that would depend a huge amount on things like if they'd felt that way since they were 3. I mean, the
Right.
major point of conflation here, it used to be that the kids who got these treatments had felt that way for many years since they were little. That was like a prerequisite for going through what was called the Dutch protocol. These days, like those guidelines are out the window. Now, I say that these treatments have been banned in about half of American states. So there's a huge difference between like if you're in Alabama. I mean, it's all going through the courts. We're going to know in June. There's a Supreme Court decision, but I'm really just talking about blue states. They don't tend to follow guidelines like that. I broke a story for The Economist about a detransitioner who went into one of the most famous gender clinics of the country at UCLA. First visit, prescribed puberty blockers. That was age 12. Age 13, testosterone. Age 14, double mastectomy. She got more rather than less suicidal along the way. Now she's 20, back to being a woman, and she's suing. And that was one of the most famous youth gender clinicians in the country. So I just don't think that's outlying. Now, the other question here, and I'll let you talk again, is like the right amount of time for a journalist to spend on some issue.
Right.
In my case, it's a mix of I felt like I found a niche. I felt like I was qualified to write about this. I hoped to drag it away from the genuine bigotry.
Right.
It's not bigoted to say I don't think 15-year-olds have the cognitive capacity to
No,
transition.
I don't think that's bigoted either.
Yeah.
My concern is and you know, I admit online, you know, you get very feisty, or I get feisty, but
Not me. I've never.
never-
I don't
Can't
get
even
fight
picture
someone.
you feisty.
But the real so the concern I have now is, you know, we're having this conversation where we have, you know, I think a consensus on being an adult and transitioning to what you do. And this is not a question for you, 'cause you can't solve this problem, but what you do when you have a political party that is deeply hostile to the civil rights of a group of people.
Yeah.
And what comes next, and the hatred, the real, and I see it online all the time. People like, you know, responding on X and Twitter and in comment sections. I mean, the real, genuine, frothing hatred. In a way, it almost feels like the hatred the Republicans had for gay people has died down, right? I mean, the Republican Party
Or
accepts
they're like
gay
sublimating
marriage.
it because they lost that battle.
Right. They lost the battle and it's become trans now. And that's where I have a real major problem. And I find myself in, you know, deep disagreement with those people. And I'm disturbed by it, quite frankly, because it seems deeply nasty and hate, that the same invective a racist would bring to race, they bring it to trans.
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
First of all, I agree with both you guys. I know
Go ahead.
Ariel does, of course. That when it was at Trump's State of the Union address, I dinged him on this show, saying, well, like, why are you putting it that way? Why are you throwing red meat to the anti-trans people, especially now when so many people have realized that they're 1-2 degrees separation from some family that's going through this issue. I mean, that's been one of the revelations. Is everybody just, oh my God, in my own little life, one of my very, very best friend's daughter is trans. One of the best men at my wedding turned out is now trans. I have trans employees.
Dan's not on a cruise, actually.
Dan's not on a cruise. So I thought Trump actually was a little tone deaf about that. And meaning like I don't even think. I think he might have turned off more people than he then he turned on. But anyway, but I agree that I think we all agree that we can smell that this has turned the corner into big.
I guess my question for Jess.
Oh wait, but that was just it.
Oh,
the other thing I want to say is that and by the way, just to say the people I know who are close to me that are dealing with this trans issue within their families and love their children, many of them are not averse to Jesse Singal. Like many of them actually see him as somebody who made them feel better about their situations. But what I want to say is that this issue about you should have written it once and dropped it. What do you do as a journalist when you feel that you've hit upon something which is important?
Yeah.
And you want to win this argument because so many people's lives hang in the balance. It's not enough just to tick the box. Okay, I wrote about it. Now I can check out.
Or even more important than the lives in the balance, you have a book contract and you get the money.
Well, I mean, you're being very, facetious or sarcastic, whatever you want to call it. But I'm saying, like, you're actually championing a cause that was important. You're doing it at a time which is very unique in the sense that you're also fighting a battle against politics intruding upon science.
Yeah,
and we saw
in both directions.
Yeah, and we saw that issue happening not just with the trans issue. It was an important battle to fight. We saw it with COVID. We saw it with BLM. We saw all kinds of things. And just writing it once is not enough. You want to win this point because it's good for the country if you win this point. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I know Ross. Let me respond to something Ross said, which ties into that. I mean, I don't view it as like. I guess like the only argument I want to win is I want people to understand the uncertainty about these treatments.
That's winning the point.
And the level of irresponsibility about the scientific establishment. Now, I agree completely about Trump. Trump said in an executive order that trans people don't have like, what was the phrasing, dignity or honor. It's clearly motivated by animosity. And this is true when if you write an article that's critical of the NYPD, you'll get these weirdo barnacles hanging on your underside who want to like kill cops or want to abolish the police. It's part of how it works.
Or oppose affirmative action, you're going to get
there's now there is a big group of people with that. I absolutely acknowledge that. And I don't know what the ratio is, but I get a lot of emails from people who are mad that I use preferred pronouns or mad that I won't call trans activists or trans women men, stuff like that. So, but in terms of the question of actual people who can be fairly called bigots, what gives them fuel? I guess, so New York Magazine did a cover story by Andrea Long-Chu, who's considered a leading public intellectual, for better or worse, making the argument that kids of any age in any mental state should have the right to any medical treatment they want.
I don't agree with.
Of course you don't, because it's idiotic.
Do
you think I don't understand how saying we should be careful about these treatments, here are the problems with the research, if we're going to play the game, what gives fuel to like the radical right?
Right.
To me, New York, first of all, I don't think any of it, like we give ourselves way too much credit. We're very solipsistic. I don't actually think what media douchebags do matters much. If it did, Trump wouldn't have been elected twice. But Andrea Long-Chu's one example. Maybe a more highbrow or substantive one is as a result of the Alabama lawsuit, all these documents fell out of discovery. I don't want to get too deep into this, but WPATH, which is the leading organization that sets these guidelines, had to release all these documents. And they showed like a unbelievably unprofessional organization that is literally commissioning research on the subject and then suppressing it. And this is in their own words. And something like that, conservatives should point that out, and conservatives should say that that's ridiculous, that the leading professional organization would do that. So it's like it puts journalists in a bind. I'm not going to not report on that because conservatives could use it, because they should use it until WPATH does better. So maybe that's too in the weeds. But I just, that question of like who is giving fuel to the right, I think is often more complicated than people say.
Yeah.
I think we have to give the benefit of the doubt in the end to the people who get things right. Just like the Biden age thing. I mean, it's like, they were trying to hurt Biden, but they were right. And the people who were covering for him.
Well, but it's not clear cut here, because like a lot of people think I'm getting things wrong, and it could be that like 15 years from now, it'll turn out my concerns were overblown. Like we're still in the figuring it out process, for what it's worth.
Well, I'm sure you would even concede there are certain things you feel high confidence about, and certain things you think the evidence still has to emerge. But clearly, I don't think there's anybody who thinks that the old regime was, as you just said, they were heading towards anybody should be able to get anything they want at any age. That couldn't be right.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Chu's position was like the far out there, but there's a general genre of
it was far out there, but that was the one we were all pressured to accept.
I think so, yeah. And that gets to like the sport. I mean, stuff that I haven't written about much, including the sports stuff. It's basically the maximalist version of self-ID, which is someone's sex is what they say it is, which I think the vast majority of people believe is problematic. But weirdly, like within liberal institutions, until recently, you couldn't really disagree with that.
My early observation on this, and I want you guys to keep talking, was, and Peril got mad at me. I said, look, I don't even know about this stuff, but I know in any non-political context, if somebody had some sort of psychological state where they wanted to mutilate themselves, cut off their genitals, whatever it is, we would take this very seriously.
I know, but don't say mutilate. I mean, I'm not trying to language police, but like that's using language like mutilate does stack the deck a little, and like that's why Trump.
Well, I use it intentionally, okay. Meaning in a non-political context.
Yeah.
If I said I need my wrist gone, I need my there are people I need my limbs gone. I want to cut off part of my body. Except in a political context, you wouldn't mince words about mutilate. That's what I'm saying. Like in any other context, we'd say this sounds serious. We better go very slowly here and get this right. And that political pressure is not the friend of good decision making or science. It's just not. So like I didn't have any vested stake. I have no bigotry about it. I don't want to go into my past, but I only want what's best for these people. I same way I only want what's best for someone who feels the urge to cut off their limbs. I only want what's best. I want fulfilling lives, life free of bigotry, all of it.
Yeah, but
this is a profound mental state. And we can't just.
What about people who want to transition? You're saying they're all mentally ill. Like, there's plenty of people who want to transition who aren't. Well, mentally ill.
This is what them. This is what you're doing, and this is what I resist. I'm not saying they're mentally ill, or maybe they are mentally ill. I don't want to get in. I don't want. It's like you're angling to get me in trouble.
No. And
yes,
you're
you are.
Sound of mind.
Yeah, well, or angling to get someone in trouble. What I'm saying is, I have a daughter. She's cutting off her breasts. Can I
now?
No, I'm saying hypothetically. Can I please react to this cautiously in her best interest, play devil's advocate without people accusing me of being a bigot? Because they don't actually give a shit about my daughter. They care about this culture war they're fighting. I care about my daughter. Mm-hmm. And there's no going back on this. And you guys are putting me in this spot where, and if I dare speak publicly about it, I'm going to get attacked and hated, and people are going to spit on me in the street. And that's the situation we're in. And I'm really saying this. It's without regard to it may be right to let her cut off her breasts, or take puberty blockers at 5. I don't have any stake in that, but I know an atmosphere that is not allowing for a proper debate.
Yeah,
and I know that those kind of atmospheres lead to bad outcomes.
Yeah, well, you need anything. You need open discussion. I think you have to discuss any issue, especially in regards to medicine and impact. I mean, look, my contrarian view is that there needed to be discussion about some of the COVID vaccines, and there were issues. mRNA vaccine, I knew people who had heart issues from it, and I'm not saying the vaccine didn't save lives, and it was great. But it was developed in less than a year, and some people had a hard time with it. And the New York Times finally, years later, wrote a big piece about vaccine,
that, which was brave.
Vaccine injuries, brave. I mean, it was late enough where they had Brave would have been doing it in like 2022 or 1, but they did it, and that kind of gave cover finally to have kind of open discussions about that. Again, in a nuanced way, where I'm personally not anti-vax. I'm very vaccinated. But I think with any issue related to medical science, I agree with you in that we have to be as transparent as possible. You're taking a drug, you're doing something to your body, and what are the pros and cons, right? What are the long-term effects?
Is your view that
what are the short-term effects?
Youth gender stuff, it should be banned for under 18s or no?
I don't have I would say I have concerns about under 18.
Yeah.
A full ban, I would have to think more about it, to be honest with you, and study it further. But I do have under 18. I have concerns. I think if you're an adult, you should have the right to decide what you want to do with your body. And if you're a minor, there should be protections in place. I do believe that. So I have concerns about 9 or 10-year-old wanting to get some medicine or some change where their brains aren't yet fully developed, right? I mean, you're making it's hard for a child to make decisions. I think that's where I come down. I think we all agree is that when you're 18 years old, you are much closer. You are technically legally adult, and you are much closer just to being in the mature space to make life decisions. When you're 12, I mean, can a 12-year-old decide to drink or do something else? I mean,
it would help me if you guys could fight about something.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm not. I'm not trying to press. But I sort of anticipated this.
Well, no, I mean,
what a bust.
No, I think
Fuck you guys.
Well, no, I guess my hater take is that I feel like there's just way too much energy given to this stuff. I get it's your beat. I really.
I mean,
do,
but the other, I'm not trying to be overly defensive, but it's like it's one of my beats.
Okay, maybe maybe it's just what you've become known for, and then that's more just a branding problem.
But Ross, on balance,
yeah,
the Jesse Singal impact on the culture is positive.
I don't know. I mean, I think so.
Let's do the. If it's negative, why is it negative?
Yeah,
I do worry. Again, I don't think it's your fault, but I'm not saying you have the power to do this either. But my concern is you've done good faith reporting on an issue, right? That's fine. You can't control the currents around you.
Yeah.
But there is a furious, hateful anti-trans movement that is gaining strength in the United States of America. I'm not saying you created that at all.
You think you fueled it? I think they had enough without just.
No one person can create something. I guess what I'm saying is, I mean, you're very anti-Trump, right? Yeah. So do you feel any conflict where if MAGA and Trump are taking up, a lot of this or some of this, do you feel any conflict there or not really? You're like, well, at least someone's doing it. The Democrats should also. MAGA's doing it, but MAGA's going too far. I guess I'm curious for the psychology of it.
I mean,
perspective.
When Trump has exhibited a lot of disdain toward trans people. And as with everything he does, it's hard to know like what's his own broken brain, what he's saying to sort of send red meat to the base.
Yeah.
So for example, because of Trump, he put out an executive order that had that same loaded language, and he called for HHS to do a review of the available evidence. Now, liberals, for perfectly understandable reasons, are now shitting on that review, claiming it's biased. I thought it was good because at this point, any review of the evidence that's honestly conducted is going to find the same thing Sweden found, Finland found, the UK found. Like, the evidence isn't good. That doesn't mean these treatments are bad. It means we don't know.
Right.
I think it's good Trump did the review of the evidence. I don't think it's good he talks about trans people that way. I'm curious why the Biden HHS couldn't have done that instead of just basically handing this issue over to activists, which I think was a huge mistake. So if Trump says, if Robert F. Kennedy did a press conference tomorrow and was like, the evidence for these treatments is weak, and he said it in that moderate way, he would be right.
Right.
But the problem is, and I think there's a lot of people on the left, some of them in your orbit who do this bullshit sort of moral jumping the gun where because you said you're not sure 14-year-olds should transition, that means you hate trans people or want them to die. And that's like,
I don't think that, but
I know, but like that's the only way you can get, in my view, that's the only way you can get from my reporting to negative impact. Also, I gotta say, like, the idea of saying, I appreciate the question, but like the impact of my work on the culture is null. It's
right.
Not,
yeah, we're all. Yeah, I but for both of us, there's only so much.
I don't follow it so closely, but I'm under the impression that the work you've done is responsible for a sea change and people on the left being open to the idea that this kind of all-in policy was ill-advised. I think
if I played a role,
if not you, who then?
Sure,
who?
If I played a role in that's fine. But separate from my work, you had like all this shit going on in the UK, Finland, Sweden, Norway. basically like Europe really started to turn against this, and I think that would have been
but unless a credible person of the left or of the left of center endorsed this stuff, it was all going to be dismissed as right-wing bigotry.
Do you have, I mean, I'm sure you do, and you've written about it before, but certain accommodations, like you see a lot of anti-trans activists hate like the all-gender bathroom. I assume you don't care. You're fine with the all-gender bathroom.
No, I think the bathroom thing is like a not ironically, but coincidentally, one of the first things I wrote about trans issues was I got to interview like a rock star hero of mine, Laura Jane Grace of this band Against Me, and she was campaigning in North Carolina against the bathroom bills, which this is a really good example because the bathroom bill thing really blew up in Republicans' faces versus kids of any age can get any treatment they want. Not that was a mainstream position, but it was like widely held.
There are people who...
It was mainstream. I felt it was mainstream in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it's a cover of New York Magazine is mainstream enough. Bathrooms, no. I think locker rooms are tricky. Mixed sex spaces are tricky.
Yeah, what do you say about the locker rooms?
I think if you are identifying and you've transitioned, you should be in the locker room you identify.
A high school locker room. A person with a penis is changing in front of my daughter in a high school.
I think if they identify that way and they're transitioning and they have the documents and all those things, I mean, you're going to force them into some place they feel less comfortable. I'm more.
Let me just clarify. I'm
on the left. I would say a trans woman can be in a woman's locker room. I do think that. Now, should the trans woman be like Leah Thomas shattering female swimming records? No, I mean that I do draw the line on athletic competition.
So your
itself.
view is
my view.
It's okay. She's in the locker room, just not.
Yeah, my view is we should protect the civil rights of these people. They are citizens and they should have, or if they're not citizens, they should have civil rights. but they should be made to feel welcome. They should be able to go to the bathrooms they identify as. That extends to locker rooms. Yes, I do think that the athletic field is different. The athletic field is one where there are records, there are scholarships on the line, there are professional opportunities. That is where I do believe the genders really have to be separated for competition purposes. But if someone's identifying a certain way and they've transitioned or transitioning, they want to go to the bathroom of their choice, they should be able to.
Bathroom is different than a locker room.
And I would extend to locker room. I don't see a massive difference.
So what's your view on?
Well, I've done some soul searching about this. I can't lie that it's a very jarring thing to imagine my daughter in a shower with somebody with a penis. But what if they've transitioned mostly? Is that fine then? If the penis has been if the transition, I guess it would be less jarring. But
that probably wouldn't apply to a high school situation for one.
But wait, let me just say. Okay, I've said on the show like 2 years ago, I'm very aware that can just be my own Pavlovian response that may not be related in any way. And as a matter of fact, if you held a gun to my head, I would probably say it doesn't really matter. Nothing's going to happen to her if she sees it. It's just jarring, It's jarring. Maybe it's jarring from some inborn instinct, which can't ever be eradicated, or maybe it's jarring because of the way we're raised. Do I actually think my daughter's psychology will be any way affected by seeing a penis in a locker room? No, I don't actually. Mm-hmm. So, it would not be. It would not actually be the end of the world to me. But then there's another layer, which is like, how far do I want to go in ramming down the throats of people of a different culture that my way is the right way? That's I'm always uncomfortable about that. Like at some point, communities, I feel, but that's comfortable. But I'm right of center. I feel like communities should have more latitude to decide some of these things.
Yeah, but also it's also kind of a libertarian view to say, someone as an individual should have their individual rights protected too. They should be able to go into the again, bathroom, locker room. Are there any other contested spaces?
Yeah,
are those
jails,
prisons? Yeah, I think you should.
I thought J.K. Rowling was weak on the prison.
You should go to the prison that you. I think by gender identity, I would send you to the prison.
You're not worried about like the Karen White case in the UK, which got a lot of press where just a rapist raped women in prisons who identified.
I think it's just I think it's just such an outlier. No, I would have to.
Well, it's an outlier until we authorize it, in which case people will start reverse engineering it.
I don't. There's always going to be outlier cases.
I guess what
I would let someone who identifies how they want to go.
The alternative is very bad too, which is if you imagine a trans woman in a male prison.
No, but that shouldn't happen either.
But if let's say fully transitioned, right? You've got your ID, you got your documents, you are a trans woman or trans man. You should go to the prison you identify as. I do think that.
Can we all agree that prison rape in general is a national shame? The fact that they can't police I've sometimes felt that prison itself is cruel and unusual punishment based on what we know goes on.
Maybe you are on the
in prison. Yeah,
I can be quite left wing.
America is a carceral state. We imprison far more people than anyone in the world.
I guess what annoys me about this conversation, and to me, it's just like a sea of compromises because I think a lot of it's not clear cut, but. There does seem to be a built-in assumption, which does run contrary to law as it's written, that like women as a sex class don't have a right to single-sex spaces, and under Title IX they do. I don't know the legal shit, but long story short, Democratic administrations, Obama and to a greater extent Biden, tried to argue like we don't need to pass a law. Title IX already protects people on the basis of gender identity, and I think we're about a decade behind in having like an actual adult conversation about. Those two rights obviously conflict, because if you're a trans woman and that's your identity and you want to change with the women, that's one arguable right. And if you're a biological woman and you want to not have males in your space, that's an arguable right. And they obviously clash. And I think we just need to acknowledge it's like two competing rights.
But do you draw a line on how far along in your transition? Let's say you transitioned 10 years ago. You appear to be a woman. You identify as a woman. You still have to go into male spaces.
No. I don't. I think trans.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I think trans women, like regardless of their level of transition, probably face specific threats at the hands of like non-trans males. Excuse me. So does that mean like you have a trans ward in a prison, or I think like just single bathrooms can resolve a lot of this, or like what they have
single
now.
Sex.
Yeah. No, not single sex. Like there's a row of sinks and then individual stalls.
Just a single. Yeah, just a single bathroom. Yeah. I like single bathrooms. They don't have that many of them.
They're very expensive to install.
That would make
as a restaurant.
I was going to say,
I would imagine they're a terror.
But my point is like there is this weird.
Yeah.
The assumption that like women, cisgender women, don't have some stake in this, and that some of them, that their discomfort shouldn't be taken into account. What do you think? We've been silencing the one woman here.
I know it's not lost on me.
Anyway, good point. Back to
first, let me explain to you what's been said.
I think that first of all, as women's bathrooms only have single stalls. I know that you guys have urinals in all of your bathrooms. So that's one thing that I think is inherently different. I also think that trans women have been using the bathroom that they identify with the gender that they identify as for decades and decades, and it is very unusual for there to be an issue.
When has there been
nobody's. I mean, I'm sure that like everything, like at some point, like something fucked up or weird has happened.
I have never seen a man in a dress in a bathroom.
No, but you would.
So I assume that's right. So I assume,
and you use a lot of women's rooms.
I assume. They've been, when I say man in dress, I mean a trans woman, sorry. I assume they've been using the ladies' room forever. My entire life, I assume they've been using the ladies' room.
Well, they have been.
Right, that's my point.
Yeah.
It's just, it's different when you're not in
problem.
And the other thing is that, I think one of the issues here is that this is allowed to be complicated. Like, I don't think that there is like, a perfect answer to like the prison question or the locker room question. I think that we do have to protect trans people's rights. It is incredibly important to do that. I also think that this idea of transition is really different for a lot of trans people.
Yeah.
Like, transition doesn't mean that like you've had bottom surgery for a lot of people. Some people don't want to have bottom surgery. That's not part of their quote unquote transition. So, this idea of like you need papers or you need this or you need that, like, I don't think that that's really fair. But I also want to say that I think that you, Jesse, seem like you're coming to this like in a really like good faith way. Like I don't get like any impression that like you have some like sinister agenda. It seems like you actually like really give a shit, and I don't know. I think that that's really important. Like, so, as a parent, like. And I know people who have trans kids, and I think it makes a difference. I don't remember, one of you said it, that like if you've been feeling like this since you're 2 or 3 years old,
That was Jesse.
it's different than like if you feel like this like all of a sudden, and then 6 months later, like, you're getting puberty blockers.
Yeah. And people, we don't have anyone on the actual other side of the debate here because we all agree on most of this. And there is a lot of denial that stuff like that would ever happen, but like, it does. I don't know how often it happens, but everyone
certainly there are children who are, God forbid, like it's horrible, suicidal, and those children should 1,000% immediately get the help that they deserve and need.
Let me just throw this into the mix. From TechCrunch.com. Jesse Singal is now the most blocked user on Blue Sky.
Yes.
The user outrage over his participation on the platform is growing. People are demanding that Blue Sky take a stand.
Oh, wow.
It's either a place that promises it won't host bad actors, or it's a place that promises not to inflate the reach of bad actors thanks to its various moderation tools. It cannot be both.
I self-deported off of Blue Sky. I don't have a Blue
pretty
Sky
horrible.
account anymore.
I
was getting shout. I did a piece for the. Sorry, I'll let. It's about Jesse, so I'm interjecting just because I heard Blue Sky and just my hair stands up. I did a piece for the Times Magazine in January about how the anti-Trump resistance of 2025 was very different than the anti-Trump resistance of 2017, which was very self-evident, right? You don't have the same mass protests. Even to this day, you're seeing a resistance, but it's not of the flavor and strength of it was 8 years ago. So I for that article, I received an endless stream of invective on Blue Sky to the point where I just decided to leave because Blue Sky wasn't furthering my career in any way.
Yeah.
It wasn't helping me. I didn't like going on there. It was like the worst of 2010's Twitter. It's like none of the playfulness of the old Twitter, which you had. It's just all invective and all venom. And it's like left on left crime. Like they're just so, they are so mad. Like they are more mad at someone on the left who just isn't towing the line in every single issue than they even are at MAGA, honestly. And so this
is why you should be naturally reflex should be to take Jesse's side.
Yeah.
No, I mean
Blue Sky's insane.
It's horrible, and I'm
surprised you're on Blue Sky.
Well, I'm not like active anymore.
Yeah.
Once they tried to kick me off, just the dumb contrarian part of me was like, "Fuck you, I'm staying." Even though
who tried, like a monitor tries to kick you off?
Yeah, they basically.
How does it work? I don't even.
Well, they reported me because we don't need to get too into this. I get very self-involved about it, but there's like a fantasy, not fan fiction, the opposite of fan fiction set of things about me. And one of them is that, I shouldn't laugh, but I stole a trans child's medical records and I posted them online. Which
they accused you of that.
Yeah. So the claim was I should be, if you go to the change.org petition.
You want me to?
Yeah. And let me know what the current number is, but tens of thousands of people said I should be kicked off Blue Sky, and the people who run Blue Sky didn't have great experiences in my own way. But to their credit, they were like, "We're not going to just like kick off a journalist.
You can't just throw. That'd be nuts. Just like."
But it is an example of what happens when because there's certain people who I think we both know their names.
You can find it probably more easily than I can.
No, this is it. Yeah, 28. It's just 28,000 people.
That's a lot of people.
Who want me to,
that's it. 28,000.
Madison, more than Madison Square Garden. Who knows how many of them are real?
Right. That's the other thing, right?
Is what?
Is who knows how many of them are real?
Yeah, I'm not that way. Whatever. Blue Sky is, there's folks on there we know who are sort of well-regarded liberal columnist types.
Right.
They have a very good time on Blue Sky because there's no disagreement whatsoever.
Like Jamel Bowie, someone like
type,
that.
yeah, hypothetically. We don't need to say specific names, but hypothetically, if you were a Jamel Bowie type and
Right.
like you're beloved and you don't really tend to say things that are controversial
Right.
for Democrats,
You sort of stay in the DNC talking points.
you're going to have a very good time on Blue Sky because you'll get nothing but support, but that also
Right.
corrodes a community and makes it crazy. And Blue Sky,
Yeah,
now
that's
Twitter's
right.
obvious. Twitter, I sign on Twitter and I had to turn off the For You tab, which luckily there's an extension for. Not for you, the recommendation. What is it for you?
It's
Well, for you, it's
there's
for
for
you.
you,
I-
and then
I
there's
don't-
your
yeah.
followers.
So my recommendations tab
Yeah, for you,
would be
it's
like,
fine.
it would be like, this is what Europe is becoming. And just like, this actually happened once. And it was like a nice square in Poland where black people were dancing with white women. That was the whole, this is what we're like. And it's very racist, but somehow, despite the fact that there's actual Nazis on there, I find it less unpleasant than Blue Sky because there's also normal people. You can just block the Nazis.
Yeah,
like
Twitter X still has. I don't love. I think Musk has made
made
it
much worse.
Much worse. You can't share your work there really anymore. Links don't travel. But I think there's still, for all its own problems and its lack of functionality, there's still kind of a community there. And what I still like about it is I feel I can encounter people with different perspectives, and it feels like more of a serious place in its own way.
Yeah.
And then Blue Sky, I didn't find that at all. It was just, for me, it was just rage, because I just wrote something critical
When
about
you say that
Trump resistance.
when you say that Twitter was worse, would you trade it all to reinstate the previous regime, knowing the excesses?
Is this like we're talking about a dictatorship or one
Okay, the
dictator
old
fell?
Twitter.
Well, in other words, are you going for some middle ground, or are you saying no? The old, despite the fact that we know there were outrageous censorship, we prefer the old regime
Right.
back, or is this a salutary change?
I think so. I have a few thoughts. I think unintentionally, Elon did the media a big favor because he cut the cord between media and Twitter. And Jesse and I both lived through 2010's media. And one of the real downsides was how Twitter obsessed every publication was.
Yeah.
Like everything ran through there. And Musk, again, Musk didn't intend to do the media a favor. He wanted to cut off their traffic. And to be fair, all links all outbound traffic is throttled on X at this point. And you can't really get Substack and X broke up, because they started Notes. So I don't know if I'd want 2010's Twitter back, because that would bring the whole Twitter media apparatus into the fore again. New Twitter is bad because I can't promote my writing there, but at the same time, I'm just on Substack now.
Yeah.
They have a great network. My list is growing, so I don't really care. So you had the old censorship, like Biden's laptop, that whole thing. Now Musk does kind of his own version of censorship.
Does he?
So,
I'm not sure that's true.
yeah, I think there's a few instances, right, where Musk was like,
which one were you gonna say?
no, I know there's a few.
There was an
He'll
early
say something
incident.
dumb where he'll be like, the term cisgender is a slur and I'm banning it. But I think often then he
Yeah.
like sees a butterfly and gets distracted and doesn't do it. In terms of
Right.
explicit examples of subjects getting censored, I think the old regime was worse.
Yeah.
But I think the behind the scenes shit, like who knows what Musk has done to promote.
He
like,
promised
Trump.
to make the algorithm transparent, by the way. That's one of the things he never did.
Elon Musk
Yeah.
broke a promise. That's weird.
yeah,
But just remind,
new
things
algo.
were so bad. This is Facebook, but it's all kind of related.
Yeah.
I had once simply cut and paste a Chuck Schumer old tweet into
Yeah.
a Facebook post, trying to demonstrate his hypocrisy on
Yeah.
previous Gaza war to a current Gaza war.
Right.
And it got censored for violating community standards. That's how crazy things have become.
Facebook's
It needed to
total-
be, but the whole worldview needed to be rebuked.
Yeah. No, I was very against tech censorship, and I'm a believer in free speech. So I agree with that. I don't think Elon is a true warrior for free speech.
No.
I think he's full of it, but I don't miss old Twitter. I think the old blue check system, and you must have had an old blue check.
Yeah, through New York Magazine.
I got one through the New York Observer. So I think the old blue check system, got messy where they're just handing them out left and right. But now the new system where you pay for one, I still think is a bit crazy, and it messes with the algorithm. You like people in your feed because they paid money to like be in your feed. Like I dislike that a lot. It hasn't been. I'll say this hasn't been as much chaos as I feared it would be when the idea anyone could buy a blue check. It's like, well, what can you trust and what's fake and what's real? I think that's kind of sorted itself out more, I would say, and I also think Twitter X has been functional, even though Musk laid off a bunch of people, which taught him a very bad lesson about the federal government. That's how you got Doge, I think, because he thought, well, I did it for Twitter, I can do it for the federal government, but very different things, obviously.
I think it's good that Twitter is less important than it used to be. I also think it's good that Blue Sky, people are trying to make that happen as like the replacement, and it's just not. The user base, the user base is too angry. B, the culture, not to bring myself back into it, but the culture of blocking is such that like if you follow me or you follow like someone bigger like Matt Iglesias, there's all these auto block things where you will instantly be blocked by tens of thousands of people. So a lot of people's first like steps onto Blue Sky are suddenly they're it's just not going to work as a business model. I think. I hope it doesn't.
If you own Twitter, would you ban Kanye West's Heil Hitler song?
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't ban anything. I'm free.
You wouldn't ban anything.
Free speech, absolutist. I'm pretty close.
I struggle with that. I'm pretty close to an absolutist. I think
just
Nazi stuff I'd have trouble with.
1,000% would block it.
We know that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't block it.
Yeah,
but I am very open to the idea that this whole idea of unfettered free speech, it may not work.
Would you bring him in here if he wanted to come on your podcast?
Oh, totally.
Over my dead, cold body.
No, I've been like championing a lot of criticizing a lot of people. My complaint is always not about speaking to somebody. It's about speaking to someone without challenging them, without actually promoting them, essentially.
Well, that's so there's this guy who's the fucking. I had a whole glass of wine, so I'm basically blacked out. The MIT guy, he had an MIT affiliation, became one of the most famous interview podcasters. The sort of nerdy guy.
Oh, Lex
Friedman had a chance to interview Zelensky, and like he just came in with like no knowledge of anything and sort of made a fool. And that's exactly right. It's not that it's always good. Like debate me bro culture is stupid, but situations like this where we could like sit down and have a conversation, we both come at it in good faith. If you have someone, like if you brought Ye in here and just were like, wow, man, what was your inspiration for Heil Hitler? That would obviously not be good.
And then like Tucker Carlson to leave the anti-Semitic stuff on the cutting room floor. Yeah. He literally, and I mean, these guys, I'm right wing on like some policies, but I'm with you guys on other stuff. Just as a little like nugget, we heard for 2-3 years that January 6th was an inside job. And now Kash Patel and Tucker, by extension, Tucker Carlson, they have access to the files.
Yeah.
Not a word about January 6th being an inside job. Tucker Carlson's not asking for him to release the files. It's like they never said it.
They did give $5 million to Ashley Babbitt's family, which was kind of crazy.
Oh.
So it's crazy.
Anyway, anything else you guys want to fight about?
No, I mean,
they're not fighting at all.
I know.
Look at what look at how nice behavior.
Even if it may not be as entertaining a show if they don't fight, I'm happy because, as I started by saying, you guys are both. I have a lot of regard for both of you. You guys should not be fighting. You guys should be hanging out.
I think a person I would fight with now is someone who doesn't the people that annoy me, and that the original tweet came from, and you caught the fire of it. And I did cross the line in how I framed it. But the thing that annoys me a lot are which Jesse's not a part of this, these sort of, heterodox writers who are not speaking up about Trump's violations of speech and the First Amendment and academic freedom. And there are, I think I'll say a lot of the heterodox, again, I'm using this term very broadly, have been pretty good on it. But, I'm the Barry Weisses of the world. If you brought her on, I would fight with her.
Well,
I find that's the silence around the.
We're gonna have to cut that one out, okay? Because
well, no, one time, look, she's my friend too.
She's not my friend.
I wrote I did a Substack on this. This is an example of what we were talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
She had an interview with Marco Rubio, and Barry is like as a person very kind, even when I disagree with her, and charismatic. But like. She let Marco Rubio basically say that, well, I'm in the State Department. I don't really have much to do with like the deportations, which is just complete bullshit. If you look at the legal theories they're claiming, and that to me, like that's when journalists can be at their best or at their not best. Like you're sitting across from Marco Rubio, and there's obviously, more about this than I do because you've done more actual reporting. There's some trade-off where you want to retain access. Like Maggie Haberman often has to make like...
you have to strike a balance for access.
Yeah.
But then when you have them in front of you, the key is you can start soft, but you have to get...
Yes. By the end of the interview, you have to ask Marco Rubio, like, there are people rotting in a fucking Salvadoran jail because, you probably shouldn't say fucking, because of decisions you made. And that pissed me off because
you're pretending you can't get him back when actually you can get him back in 2 seconds.
The United States government can get anyone back.
Yeah, just bring him back. Immediately
they want it in 6 seconds. And that's the thing where I do think there are independent thinkers on the right and the left who will ask tough questions of politicians. Like I think there are a lot of them out there. I think some have really just folded in with MAGA to the point where they give up their free speech values. Free speech is something. The First Amendment to me, it's not left right.
No.
It's
they might have never had those values though.
Well, I think that's what we realize. I think the clarifying element of Trump's return to power is, in a way, it's a real Rorschach test. You see who believes in free speech and who doesn't, right? Because you had a lot of people on the left, as we know, we've talked about, who never cared about free speech before. Now they care because it's the Palestinian, pro-Palestine.
Yeah, right after October 7th, people were poor student signs a petition, and they withdraw her offer for a job somewhere.
Yeah, no,
and people saying, "Good, she shouldn't." That's crazy.
Yeah, no. So
should that happen to whatever? The
Raina Workman was her name. Yeah,
but I forget her first name. Ozturk, the woman who was picked up in Somerville, Mass. This is like. I guess it's not like the ultimate nightmare situation because I hate to say it, but like citizens and non-citizens do have different rights, but it's pretty close to the nightmare situation of like literally you wrote an op-ed.
Right.
We're going to try to,
well, citizens and or illegal residents.
She's
and
illegal, right. But I think part of what happened is they're like, look, I understand why people want to forget about it now because we have bigger threats, but there was this moment of sort of the apex of progressive. I think a lot of it's not actually progressive, but whatever you want to call it, wokeness, cultural hegemony,
social justice, woke,
and it made a lot of left of center intellectual life and institutions miserable. And at that point, if Christopher Rufo gets up and says, "I don't think we should have a weird mandatory DEI training to like work at a law firm that involves Robin DiAngelo," I'm going to be like, "Yes, he's right about that." And it makes sense that now that everything's different. We're going to go our separate ways.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the Rufos, and I did a piece for this in New York Magazine on anti-woke intellectuals and who was standing up for speech and who wasn't. I'll say something about Rufo. I disagree with him entirely on almost everything, but he's very open about it, which I actually do appreciate. Like he's very. There's really no bullshit with him. Like
he's even open about his embrace of expediency over principle.
No, he is. He has. I have an ideological project.
Yeah,
I want to impose it on the country and win. And I disagree with that project, but at least exactly where he's coming from. And so in a way, I have a grudging respect for that, though I dislike what he's doing with academia and with politics in general. But
all right, closing statements.
He's
closing
honest.
statement. I don't know. I thank you for talking this out, Ross. I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry, both of you, that we didn't disagree more. I think anything.
No, I'm happy you didn't disagree more. Bless you.
Thank you.
I give you both credit for showing up.
He's in the middle of his closing statement.
Well, she can have her closing statement, then I'll finish mine.
Go ahead.
No, I don't have a closing statement.
I guess all I'll say is like there's the two things that have bothered me, and I'm pretty eager. I'm excited to write this book. It will be nice to move on and hopefully not like it's enough. I agree. At a certain point, you've covered subject, you can move on to a new one. The two things that have really annoyed me, though, are the flippancy with which people talk about really serious medical interventions, increasingly given to kids who have a lot of other stuff going on. Like, you need to understand these are serious decisions. And then just the blind trust of medical establishments that have often failed us in the past. Like, I don't think these are good progressive values to just be like, nah, I'm sure they know what they're doing. I think to me, like, intelligent progressivism or leftism involves a little bit more skepticism of authority.
I would say, especially when we've left the realm of double-blind experimentation and peer review into politics. As soon as you sense a political pressure, that's it.
And I don't even know how I would divide up the blame pie on who politicized it, but I do think the left, to the extent we can treat that as like a unitary thing, made a lot of decisions about its priorities with regard to trans issues that made the situation much worse. I mean, the best example is Harris, where the ACLU asked her this very wild hypothetical about an illegal alien who's detained but needs bottom surgery, like a situation that just probably doesn't come up much. And again, this isn't why she lost, but like at that moment in time, you had to be like, yep, anything.
Of course they should pay for it.
Yeah. Now, I would say that, I'm deeply concerned about the anti-trans bigotry in the United States of America coming from MAGA right now. I think it's disturbing and vile. At the same time, I agree with Jesse where we have to have good faith discussions about medical science and what makes sense for minors to take. Again, I'm not an expert in that, but I recognize we need to talk about these things in the open, right? I mean, because certain drugs have certain side effects, right? Certain pharmaceutical interventions can cause certain issues down the road in all facets. So on that front, I agree. And also, like I said, on athletics, I'm very sympathetic to the Leah Thomas challenge and sort of what female athletes like, Martina Navratilova have said about female athletics. Again, I think there's a balance to be struck here, right? There's a discussion to be had. I hope we can move past this era of real vicious anti-trans bigotry. My hope is that, like how the Republican Party was very anti-gay for many decades, that did dissipate. Maybe in 5 to 10 years, trans people will be left alone and can live in dignity and live in peace and have their passport, their gender, and they go on a flight. And it's not a big deal. They can go to a bathroom. It's not a big deal. And we can all just move on and they can be part of the country like everyone else. That's my hope. And eventually, I think we'll get there. I do believe in America and in progress. I think we're moving there eventually.
So I want to say, first of all, that I used the word mutilate to make a point. It wasn't. I mean,
I'm going on Blue Sky.
I purposely chose a provocative term because I was trying to make the point that in outside of political context, people wouldn't get upset about that.
Yeah.
Like, you want to call, number one. Number two, maybe this is a glass of wine point, but during the time when they were trying to get the Confederate flag off the state capitals, I know that. I remember many Southerners, I knew them, including Democratic Senator Jeb Webb. They said, "But you don't understand. This is who we are. This is our culture. It doesn't stand. We're not embracing it because we think slavery was right. We're embracing it." And I always felt that liberals did a dumb thing by always accusing these people of being racists, rather than explaining to them, "Listen, yeah, I get it. I don't begrudge you your bond with your
love of slavery.
Your bond with your people. But do you understand how this makes me feel?"
Right.
And I feel like with a lot of these trans issues, it does backfire when they accuse people who like get upset about their daughter in a locker room and calling them bigots and racists, rather than putting it's like, listen, but you must have some friends. All I want is for these people to be able to live fulfilling lives. You want them to live fulfilling lives, don't you? Okay, well, what can we do? And maybe even though something might hit you the wrong way, but if you stop and think about the other person, maybe you'd be able to even bend and give them the benefit of the doubt. in the name of giving these people a fulfilling life, even if it rubs you a little bit the wrong way. That's kind of what happened with gay marriage, by the way. I think that's part of it.
I think so.
So there's a, kind of a messaging strategy. I know that's completely naive to expect that would ever be translated into real world things, but that is the way people are persuaded. That was Andrew Sullivan's genius, and I believe he saw this when no one else did. I certainly didn't see it. That once gay marriage was legalized, everybody just saw it differently. All of a sudden, it was the guy next door. Somebody I like this guy. Why I can't hate this guy.
Right.
Anyway, and some of that is happening with trans. We are all waking up to the fact that there's way more trans-related issues than any of us realized when it was kept underground, and that's a good thing in the long run. All right, anything else, Periel?
No, good job, guys.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
guys. Good night, everybody.